And so in that group, I think only two of them had ever raced at Henley before. And so I had never been, most of our athletes had never been. So, we talk about, training every day is sort of as like a problem solving mission where we're just trying to get better. And I think this was a mission of, like, we haven't been before. We don't know. We don't know our opponents. We don't know this regatta. Most of us had not done this before. But what was rewarding was, you don't have to have done something before to, do your research, figure it out, prepare, and go over and do it the first time and be able to do something pretty darn well. So I was really happy. And I want that to be one of the life lessons for the athletes in our program is that, you put your mind to something, you got to figure out what does it take to do it. You got to prepare really well. You got to be smart and you got to obviously work hard. And if you do that and you put your mind to it, you can show up and tackle anything that you want. You just it takes what it takes to do, different things that you want to accomplish in your life. And so you just got to figure that out and go through the stages of development, go through the process to make sure you're prepared.
Let's jump in. For everyone listening, we have Justin Price, head coach of the Rutgers University Women's Rowing Program, fresh off of coming home from racing at Henley, winning the Island Challenge Cup, which we'll talk about here in a second. So, I'll let Coach Price kind of dive into his intro, but I'm very excited to talk to Justin because I've been following Rutgers for a while. They had an incredibly successful season this past spring. Obviously, to cap it off with a win overseas is definitely a good way to settle into your summer finally, as I'm sure it feels. So excited to dive into some of these things, talking a little bit about the program that Coach Price has continued to build, in his, having been there since 2018. But with that, Justin, why don't you kick things off? Give us a little bit of your intro, talk a little bit about just how you got into coaching, and then also, if you can, what does the team, at this point here in late July, early August, what are the things that are kind of like top of your to-do list in order to kind of prep for what's to come here in a few weeks when you have athletes back on campus, knowing that early July is when your season officially ended, having been at Henley, like what's on the top of the to-do list for you and the team as you guys kind of prep for the fall? But just kick things off, give us a little intro and we'll go from there.
Yeah. Sounds good. Thanks, Kevin. This has just finished my 8th season at Rutgers. It's been awesome. And, we just celebrated our 50th year of women's rowing at Rutgers University. So it was an incredible year, incredible celebration, and a great season, and looking forward to kicking off our 51st season this coming fall. But yeah, I finished just my 8th season and started in summer of 2017, and before that I was out on the West Coast at Loyola Marymount University for a year, and was at UCLA as assistant coach and associate head coach there for 7 years, which was my alma mater. So that's where I learned to row. I learned to row in college at UCLA back in 2002 when I took my first strokes, and had never rowed before college, but had been an athlete all my life, and wanted to stay involved with that. And so the opportunity to continue doing that in college was awesome. Something I wanted to jump on, and had an incredible time with learning the sport, being able to represent my university, and build great bonds with my teammates, and had some great people coaching me to teach me some great things. And when I finished up at UCLA as an undergrad, I was planning to go to law school and become a lawyer. So that was the path that I was on, and went out to the University of Notre Dame and spent 3 years in the Midwest, out in South Bend, Indiana, which was great experience. And I wanted to stay involved with the sport, so I got involved with the men's club team out there, and worked coaching the freshman men for 3 years while I was going to law school, and just had a great time. Had a blast. Worked with some great students, some great athletes there. It was an incredible 3 years, and had a lot of fun and had some success, and decided, I want to keep doing this coaching thing if I can, as long as I can do it and be successful. So I decided to sort of pursue coaching, and was fortunate enough to get hired at my alma mater back in the summer of 2009, a number of years ago now. And that was my first year at UCLA, and like I said, was there for 7 years, and had my first head coaching stint in Los Angeles at Loyola Marymount University, and then was hired after a year there here at Rutgers, and getting ready for year 9 here. So it's been fun, and looking forward to getting into this fall and welcoming our incoming freshman class. So as we get ready, we have our returning athletes who are really going to lead the charge. They know how we do things around here, and we've got a motivated group that's ready to get back to it. were able to go a little bit longer, obviously racing at Henley and get into racing in July. So normally we're done after the NCAAs in early June. So it's kind of a treat to get with a small group of our athletes to get another month with them. So that was really a lot of fun, a great experience, and hopefully good for the training as well that we were able to keep going for a little bit longer. But obviously most of our team was not able to be part of that, those two boats that raced at Henley. So excited to get the upperclassmen back. They'll lead the way and then really welcome our incoming freshman group in September when we start.
That's awesome. And what and I like what you said with like getting an extra month to be with the athletes, and that, in many ways, like if you weren't going to Henley, right, they're gone in early June, and the season's done from there. So to kind of get an extra month. But you mentioned something. So you started rowing at UCLA. You said that you played other sports kind of growing up, prior to going to UCLA and taking your first strokes there. Like, I'm always curious about it because I was a walk-on at St. Joe's however many years ago, first strokes in college as well. And just what other, like what was your athletic background and what led you to rowing? What was that like interest that led you to rowing? And do you feel like you being a walk-on there was something that, hopefully in many capacities maybe led to this attachment, was there something in your walk-on experience rowing for 4 years that kind of gave you this attachment to rowing and the maybe even aided in the quest to do it as a career long term? A little bit of a, just take that wherever you want, but just like your journey, your athletic background, and then the attachment to walking on at UCLA.
Yeah, well, I always loved sports. I always loved being an athlete. So, from being a young kid, playing sports like baseball, soccer, basketball, growing up, were probably the primary sports that I played as a kid growing up, and just loved it. I just love being around sports, love playing sports, love watching sports, and I've loved being on a team. I think that's always been the theme. Is challenging myself athletically, being part of a team, being part of a group. No matter the sport, it's always been really, really fun. So getting to college, having the opportunity to continue on in a new sport. I didn't know much about rowing before I started, but I felt like it has a reputation for being challenging and turning out disciplined people. And so it's like that was really appealing to me, something that I wanted to be a part of. And then again, the opportunity to represent something so much bigger than myself and be a part of a team. That's something I've always wanted to do. And in terms of parlaying that into coaching, that's why I continue to coach, is I love being part of a team. I always have, and contributing to, like I said, something so much bigger than just myself.
And one more question on that. I think I read in that, like, you went to law school when you're at Notre Dame. You kind of went through that process, like and then choosing to kind of go down this path and obviously being a coach. Like, was that something where it's like, hey, like when I was an undergrad, or not an undergrad, but like in at Notre Dame, going through law school and all these different things, like how did that kind of like trajectory of, hey, you know what, I'm gonna stick to it, like what was the process in your mind of like, oh, that I'm gonna this coaching rowing is fulfilling to me, I'm gonna pursue that route? I think this is an interesting conversation for any coach out there, aspiring coach. How did you weigh that, where it's like, okay, I could go this route in which my degree set me up for, or I can continue fulfilling this passion of coaching and eventually getting to this point today with Rutgers and the successes that you had. But at that time, you couldn't foresee that. Talk about that if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think, coaching's a bit of a unique career in some ways, and that, when there's not a lot of, that I'm aware of anyway, universities that offer, coaching type degrees, especially to undergraduates, so, it may have been something that I would have pursued, earlier, had it been a more formal, career path in terms of educational, pathway and things like that. It wasn't. So I needed a plan. I needed to figure out, what was I going to pursue? What was my career going to be? And that's what led me to law school, is that was always something that was really appealing to me, something I thought I would enjoy and could be good at. So that's why I pursued that. And so while doing that, I had always been part of a team, had always been an athlete, wanted to stay involved, had a great experience rowing for 4 years in college. So I just reached out to the men's team, and again, I didn't know what the role was going to be. I didn't know that I was necessarily going to coach. I just wanted to stay involved. When I first started, and obviously had a lot on my plate starting law school, and wanted to make sure I respected the challenge that was going to present. So I didn't jump on in and commit to coaching, or even to be honest, didn't have the opportunity necessarily put out there straight away, but I was just around the program early on as I got my feet under me and started to establish my sort of routines and things and figure out school, and was just around the team and trying to figure out if there was a role somewhere and they needed some help with the freshman sort of novice group, and I was happy to help out with a couple other law students, and so there's three of us kind of working together, tag teaming the coaching of the freshman group. And by the end of the first semester, I felt like there needs to be kind of one leader here. I didn't intend for it or know it was going to be me, but I just felt like leadership is really important, and the athletes needed to have a clear leader, and not have a different coach or somebody working with them different on a daily basis. And so basically they're like, yeah, you want to do it? And I'm like, sure, let's go, let's do it. So by January of my first year there, all right, you're coaching like in the freshman year, running this group. And so yeah, just had a lot of fun, and wasn't necessarily the most successful on the water that year, but I felt like, what, like this is I'm having a really good time doing this, and I want to give it another shot. But sort of start the year knowing like, all right, this is what I'm going to do. So sort of thought about it and prepared in the summer. That was summer of 2007, and then going in like, all right, let's be ready to go from recruiting. When I got back to campus there in South Bend, and like let's have a plan from a coaching perspective. Like, what would I want to do to be the best leader and the best coach for the program that I could be, welcoming in the freshman novice walk-on group, and had a lot of success with that group in the first sort of full year that I did it. And, ended up taking the freshman eight to the ACRA championships that was out in Oklahoma City that year. And the Notre Dame freshman eight won the ACRA regatta, and had a novice lightweight four that won as well. So that was fun to get a lot of success, and it was really rewarding. And like, okay, here we go. Let's keep doing this, because this is a lot of fun, and like to think that I was having a pretty positive impact.
Oh, that's awesome. And I think I'm always curious about that with how people kind of like balanced two paths in one, right, and then going kind of down the coaching route, and obviously getting to where you are today. But I think with that, let's talk a little bit about the team and just this season that you had. I want to start with what's fresh, and I think we chatted about it a second before we started recording, but year 50 for Rutgers, for the Rutgers women's rowing program, and then first time taking the squad to Henley, and then obviously having amazing success there, winning. Just, I think one of the things that I think would be really informative for young athletes out there, parents out there who are listening, coaches out there who are listening, like Henley is one of those experiences that I think a lot of people kind of like, they put on that bucket list of rowing to kind of get there, whether it's with their college program or, a club or whatever it may be, whether it's in high school. Talk about that process. Like, for obviously, I think one of the biggest challenges for any team out there, right? You got to kind of go there and make sure it's a worthwhile experience. You obviously have to afford to be able to go there and all these different things. Like, so the challenge is, okay, well, you probably can't go there every year, at least, not to my knowledge. I think many programs kind of pick their times to go, but first time in the 50-year history, like, talk about that experience of, okay, like, we feel like this is a worthwhile adventure for our team. When did that process come about? And then where did you kind of begin in like, okay, we're going to go there, even without knowing what the outcome would be once you actually got there with winning and the successes and all those different things. Just, I think it'd be fun to enlighten athlete or coaches and parents, like, on the experience of going to, one of the most prestigious regattas in the world, if not the most prestigious regatta. But just take that wherever you want, just kind of walking us through that experience and that process.
Sure. Yeah. Well, it's definitely something that, yeah, it's sort of been a bucket list experience that as a coach, you want to be able to give to the athletes. And, it's something we talked about over the years, and it's come up. And, I always said, I don't want to just go over there just to go. While it is a great experience and something that you'd love for all the athletes to experience during their lifetime and during their athletic career, I also think it's important that they learn, do things that you can you're going to have success at, and when you're well prepared. And obviously, for us, for our brand, and for the standards that we want to have within the Rutgers women's rowing program, it's incumbent upon me to make sure that we go over, if we're going to spend money and go on a trip like that, that we represent our program, our entire at a really high level, that we don't just go over there just to compete or just for the experience. So that's always been the challenge, is okay, when do we go? And then of course it takes a lot of money and fundraising, and takes a lot of planning. So you got to kind of figure out well in advance, but you also got to make sure that you're good enough. And so that was one of the challenges that we've always had. And, for a number of reasons, we felt like this would be a really good year. We had some donors step up, with this being the 50th year, some people that have really been impressed by the success, that we've had in the program, and really wanted to invest in the program. And so that sort of started happening in the fall. We had a big donor step up, and say that he wanted to invest in the program, and this opportunity to fund this trip to Henley was really appealing to him. So he stepped up in a big way back in the fall. That made it possible. We talked to the team; they were excited, and I give our current team, or I should say last year's team, a lot of credit, because they stepped up in a big way. They understood, and we talked about it. We said we're not going over there just to compete. We want to go over there to represent our program at a really high level and be really difficult to beat when we go there. And they worked really hard. They took that and ran with it, and they just provided great leadership and great training, and great racing, obviously, all year long, and showed that they were going to be ready for the challenge. And I just think the whole experience, obviously the regatta, the racing, the trip, was really special. But I think as a coach, it was really rewarding, because only, I think, two of our athletes we brought 22 athletes, I think, in total, and we brought like 2 8s. And so in that group, I think only 2 of them had ever raced at Henley before, and so I had never been. Most of our athletes had never been. So we talk about training every day sort of as like a problem-solving mission, where we're just trying to get better. And I think this was a mission of like, we haven't been before. We don't know our opponents. We don't know this regatta. Most of us had not done this before. But what was rewarding was, you don't have to have done something before to do your research, figure it out, prepare, and go over and do it the first time, and be able to do something pretty darn well. So I was really happy, and I want that to be one of the life lessons for the athletes in our program, is that you put your mind to something. You got to figure out what does it take to do it. You got to prepare really well. You got to be smart, and you got to obviously work hard. And if you do that and you put your mind to it, you can show up and tackle anything that you want. You just got to, it takes what it takes to do, different things, that you want to accomplish in your life. And so you just got to figure that out, and go through the stages of development, go through the process to make sure you're prepared. And I think we did a really good job with that. Just really proud of our athletes, and excited that they got to experience some success in doing that.
Yeah, and obviously going over there and doing what you guys did, and kind of putting, obviously making it all worthwhile, obviously on the results side too, right? Kind of going over there and having major success. So they basically knew, in the back, as a team, you kind of had the forward thinking enough to kind of prep for it and do the right things with as you navigated the spring. And you said in the fall, you're kind of starting to kind of like, oh, like, we're starting to get some support, and this could be a worthwhile trip for our 50th year. And then the athletes probably had some lead up, kind of knowing that this was part of the plan all along, as as long as you guys had the spring that you had, and all these different things. Is that correct? Like in the sense that they had preparation leading up to it?
We decided, hey, we're going, and I told him, like, hey, we have to earn this, but we're going, basically, so get ready, let's do it. And like I said, I give them a lot of credit. They did a great job. And understanding that, like, okay, got it. They understood very clearly what needed to be done, and what we were going over to do. And we said we're going to take at least 1 8. We'll take 2 if we think it makes sense. And we ultimately decided, based on the way the group was training and how committed we felt everybody was, that we wanted to bring 2 8s, and we actually ended up bringing a couple more spares, which was great, just to sort of reward them for their hard work and show them that we see what they're doing, and we really appreciate it, and we think that they're doing the right thing, and all sort of had earned the opportunity to go over and represent our team. So that's kind of how it went, and we sort of I think probably in the fall we knew we were going to take at least an 8, and then sometime in the early spring we said, what, we're taking 2. So we're going to be committed to this. So everybody get ready, and let's be well prepared. And then obviously we had some of our athletes that raced that were not necessarily going to be participating because they were racing for their national teams at the under 23 World Championships. We had an athlete that's racing at the Senior World Championships as well. So that sort of created new opportunities too, and made it another fun challenge after the season to sort of get back together, but have a new look. So like the first 8, had a few people that had been in there during the spring that were doing national team stuff this summer. So it allowed different people to sort of step up, whether it was people that had been in the first 8 all year, sort of had to step up in new roles. And then some athletes that had not necessarily been in the first 8 all season, earn the opportunity to get in there and step up and race really, really well when we went over to England.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. That's cool. And I think this is just informative and educational for a lot of people out there who maybe aspire to go one day, whether it's a part of a team or they're a coach looking to take their program, and the forward thinking that kind of is involved in it. And to be able to take a large percentage of your roster over there. So I think awesome experience. I think now bridging off of that, I think one of the things I always love asking college coaches as they start to now think ahead. And I think for you, right? So we have Henley, right? We went through that, right? You got back, a few weeks ago, but you're also coming off of a very successful season with the program. We're going to talk about that timeline a little bit, like, your time at Rutgers. And I think the success that you've had over the last few years with how many, with being at NCAAs and all these different things, but just thinking a little bit more future now. Finished 8th at NCAAs, 2nd in the Big Ten, took the team to Henley, really, really successful season. What does the next few weeks, if you kind of are messaging it to your athletes and to your coaching staff and all these different things, like you have the fall coming up in 5 weeks, essentially, probably even less, right? I think, whenever you get back on campus, what does that messaging look like in the sense that, hey, like here's the focuses that we have for the remainder of the summer to help better position us to not stay complacent, but hopefully build on what is on paper and in our eyes a very successful season? How can we kind of continue to grow with that? Like, what's that messaging been looking like for you, to your team, to the coaches, as a staff, as you guys prep for the last third of the summer, right? Which for you it feels like probably you're going to be here before you know it, back in the launch. What's that messaging look like to the coaches, or sorry, to the athletes as they prep for the fall?
First of all, yeah, it's I'm looking forward to it. The countdown is on, and it's great that we have a shorter summer than normal from when we were able to last compete. So it's awesome. I get to the summer and I'm like, all right, is it fall yet? Let's go. I'm ready to go and just chomping at the bit. And like I said, can't wait to get our incoming freshmen here and just get our returners back. So yeah, it's just over 4 weeks probably. We start the very very first week of September when we'll be getting back together. We say every year to our team, we want to make sure we have a strong program. And, we talked about there's been a 50-year history so far. We're looking to the next 50 years, and we want to make sure that we're even stronger in the next 50 years. But a strong program is built with strong team after strong team after strong team. And each team is a different team. So while many of the people on next year's team were on last year's team, like, this next year's team is a different team. So in terms of the message from our staff to all of our athletes, like, we want to be really, really clear that this is a new year. This is a new team, even though a lot of us were part of last year's team that will be on next year's team. So that's what makes it fun. That's what makes it really fun as a coach, as an athlete. That's what makes it sort of, every year is a unique year with a life and a history all of its own. So when we have September 2025, that will be the first and only time that we're ever going to experience that. So we need to make sure we're well prepared to have a really good September 2025. And when we have our first workout, our first practice, like, even if it's something similar, or an athlete feels like, well, I've done a workout like this before, or I've done a drill like this before, or whatever it is. Well, they haven't done it on that day ever before, and they're never going to do it on that day ever again. So that's the sort of mentality that we want to really have as a program every year, every day, so that we are not ever just, punching the time clock. We don't want it to feel like, oh, it's the same thing. We've done this before. It's like, nope, it's new. So even though this will be my 9th year at Rutgers, like, this is a new year at Rutgers, and it's going to have, again, a life and history all of its own. And we're looking forward to writing a script, because it's not already written for us. We get to write it every day with everything that we do. And so that, even now and before this, with the preparation leading up to it and the recruiting to to build the athletes and assemble the group that's going to be coming in as freshmen. That's going to add a lot to our team this year.
And what's like the fall like? I think like for you and your philosophy, obviously the and the rest of the coaching staff, like the main focus is obviously being best positioned for the spring and winning or getting as far as you can and positioning yourself at the national championship. What are like the main focal points of a fall season for that, again, just whatever you're willing to share, but just highlights that you guys kind of center a lot of your training on, throughout the fall? Like obviously it's a long season, just in the sense of getting ready for late May, early June. And whether it's head racing and all these different things, or it's base fitness and technique or whatever it may be, like what are some centerpieces that I think for any, Division I program, but most notably Rutgers here in this conversation, like what do you guys kind of set your intentions on, entering the fall season, knowing that the spring is however many months away?
Yeah, well, certainly our sights are focused on championship racing in May, but we need to understand that every day is really, really valuable. And if we feel like in September when we're starting off with the fall semester that that May is far away and that we have plenty of time, well, we may waste opportunities. We may waste days. So, from that standpoint, that's really the fall is about, again, welcoming our new athletes, seeing who's going to sort of step up in new roles and see where people are. Obviously there's been a period of time over the summer that we're not with most of our athletes and we're not seeing them, so again, it could be completely different script from what happened last May, where somebody's sitting, what boat they were in, how they're performing. They could be at a whole different level when they come back in September. And so, sort of seeing where everybody is, allowing them to see where they are, I think is really what's important as well. And then doing as much teaching about the basics. We talk about never getting bored with the basics, and we have to start the year with the basic things. Like this is how things run at the boathouse. This is how we do our basic things when we're warming up, or this is how we want to operate on a daily basis. And so teaching that to our newcomers, but also making sure that, again, our more experienced athletes are not just, punching the time clock, that they are bringing a renewed sense of enthusiasm, vigor, focus into every day, into every drill and everything that they're doing. And then we want to make sure that everything that we're doing, we want to be training at a world-class level. I think, as a coach, I'm fascinated and just really enamored with, across all sports, across all industries, when you see certain areas, around the world where there's a hot pocket of success in a given sport or a given industry or whatever the case may be. It's like, what's going on there? And I think sometimes you see some of the people that are the best in the world at whatever they do, they may come from, whether it's humble beginnings, or there may not necessarily be from the outside looking in any particular rhyme or reason to why are they so successful? Why are they among the best in the world at what they do? But it's not luck. It's because there's things that they're doing that are really, really critical to their success and allow them to be among the best. And we want to make sure here at Rutgers that we're doing a lot of those things, that our basics are at an elite level, at a world-class level. And as a coach, we need to teach, what does that look like? What does that feel like? What does that mean on a daily basis? So, a Tuesday early on in September, we're getting oars down for the first time. We're carrying the boat down to the dock, or we're doing a placement drill, or we're sitting at the finish, or we're moving from finish to body over. What does that mean? What does that mean to do that at an elite level? What does it not mean? And then as we go through the process, like teaching our athletes, what they need to be doing to be on the right track. The other thing, of course, is fitness. Obviously, fitness is a really important part of our sport. To be prepared to race 2,000 meters at a high level and do a mile and a quarter, it takes a lot of power, it takes a lot of strength, it takes a lot of endurance, and it takes a lot of fitness. And that process takes time. It takes time over the course of a year, from the beginning of September when we start through our championship racing in May, but it also takes time over somebody's life, over somebody's career. You really see lifetime miles add up, and lifetime mileage is really an important thing for, I think, all endurance athletes. So we want to start that process and tend to that training and the fitness in a really strong way through the fall.
Yeah, and I love that you mentioned, especially with just the preparation and the fitness and how that's a continual process and helping athletes. Obviously that's a big component for what we do, right? As an power endurance sport. Take me, if you can, take me through like what does what does a September week look like in the life of a Rutgers, Division One rower? Like, in the sense that, Jen, just whatever you're willing to share in the sense that, like, hey, we're practicing 6 days a week. We do some strength and conditioning, this and that. Like, what is that typical, just to, again, enlighten, the athletes, the parents, the coaches, like what does a workload look like in the fall, right? Obviously the spring's a whole nother animal because that's going to be tailored towards success at, again, in May and June. What does like a September kind of like week look like for a Division One rower competing at a program that is very very successful within all of NCAA rowing?
Well, again, the training is really, really important and really, really valuable. So, when we're in school, we are training. We have different things within the NCAA rules. There's periods of time that we are in 8 hours that we're allowed to be fully coaching and having mandatory training with the team. And there's periods that we're in 20 hours a week, and so there's things around the NCAA rules that as coaches, we make sure that is clear to the expectations and outline kind of what our schedule is during the week. But we also want the athletes to know that the NCAA rules, are there to sort of guide the coaches on what we can and cannot do. But in terms of like what the athletes can do to train, like the NCAA can't stop them from being really, really good if they want to be really, really good. So it just has to be driven by them. But that's true all the time. It's not like it's we don't look at it like in the summer months or if we're in an 8 hour period that all right, now that's driven by the athletes, and then in a 20 hour week that it's now driven by the coaches. Like that's not true at all. We don't want that to be the case at all. The way we are allowed to operate as coaches is different during the year than it is during the summer. It is different in an 8 hour week than it is in a 20 hour week. So early on, we have some 8 hour weeks, some 20 hour weeks. So there's some ebb and flow around what we can do as coaches. But in terms of our most successful athletes, what they're doing is very similar regardless. So when we're in school, yeah, we're training once or twice a day, depends on the day, with what we're doing, and just trying to build our mileage. And so where we start at the beginning of September is very different from where we end up. We want to make sure that we can ramp up and build as we go. And so each athlete's got to be in tune with where they are certainly from a fitness standpoint, from a mileage standpoint, with what they're used to. So some of our older, more experienced athletes are able to handle a little bit more because they've built that over time, and some of our younger athletes may need a little less stimulus and or may not be able to handle as much right away. So it's really important that we train smart and that we set them up for success. And so all this to say, everything that we do, we want to make sure we're empowering and teaching the athletes that they are very much driving their ship. Like I can't as a coach, and we can't as a coaching staff make anybody successful. We can help guide them, but it's our most motivated people that want to be the best that we're going to be able to help guide to accomplish whatever they want to accomplish. What they need to do is understand their stages of development that they go through, and we want to help them understand those stages. And certainly we'd like to accelerate those stages as much as possible, but I don't really believe you can skip the stages of development. I don't think you can skip the steps. There's no way to skip steps. I think if you train really, really well and you're really motivated and you work hard, I think you can accelerate those compared to a less motivated athlete, but I don't think you can skip the steps. So when we're in school, we're training 5 or 6 days a week, depending on, again, whether we're an 8 hour week or 20 hour week. But again, that's what the coaches are able to do, but the athletes can do training on their own to supplement that. If we're in an 8 hour week, that will certainly happen for the top athletes, and in terms of making sure they get the mileage that they need to give themselves the stimulus on a daily basis to create the adaptations and the fitness, cardiovascularly, from a strength and power standpoint, to be prepared to make their boats go as fast as they want to go, because they want to be competitive at the Big Ten and the NCAA championships in May. And we certainly have a lot of respect for the level of competition. That's one of the things that we love about being Division I athletes in the Big Ten, is we know that we're going to have a lot of great competition across the conference, across the country. But we also respect ourselves and our capabilities, and we want to make sure that we can compete to our capabilities first and foremost. So if we really respect what we're capable of, we need to train with intent, with consistency, and with a motivated mindset, so that we try to become as capable as we're capable of becoming. And then hopefully, if we do that well, that will be pretty tough for our opponents to beat.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love just again, like, there's progression, and at the end of the day it's centered around just training and development and preparation for the long term goal, which is to perform 2,000 meters NCAAs, right? Like um take me, if you can, take me back to, I think one of the things that, again, just learning a little bit more about the Rutgers program. And you said, right, you just finished up year 8, you're entering year 9. I think one of the things I was seeing on the website, like, you guys have made the NCAA, championship, I think the last 5 years, I think, right, or six straight years, kind of making the NCAAs, right? Which, for those that are unaware, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's like it's 22 teams out of 90 Division One programs plus whatever the number's at. It's no small task to kind of make the dance and kind of get to the NCAA championships, let alone kind of top 10 finishes. But if you can, like, take me back to your first few years at Rutgers and that process for just painting that picture of, I think what I read online was, the team had an 18-year drought, prior to making the NCAAs for the first time. And then now you're going on consecutive years and top 10 finishes and all these different things. Like, when you rewind the clock to year 1, right, back in 2018, what are some things that, for you, and as you've gotten the coaching staff and alignment and all these different things, like, what are the things that kind of helped, again, really broad question, but lead, and again, take this program that maybe has been on the bottom of the Big Ten to now top 3 finishes year in, year out, and on the contention, or, on the verge of winning, the conferences and all these different things. What does that journey look like over the last 8 years from start to finish?
First year was a lot of fun. I think that was one of my, most fun years that I've had in my coaching career thus far. And so when I started here in the summer of 2017, like you mentioned, there had been a period of time, 18 years, that the team had not gone to the NCAA championships. So there was some success early on at the first several NCAA championships, where Rutgers was able to compete. And do pretty well nationally and at the NCAAs in the late 90s. Um, and then, I think that there was a period of time changing conferences, like, the Rutgers had been in the Big East for a period of time, and then went to the American Athletic Conference for a year, and then came into the Big Ten. And I think that the program had found that to be a bit of a challenge, And so when I was hired in the summer of 2017, we had just gotten 8th out of 8. At the Big Ten championships for the previous several years. And it had not fielded all the boats. So there's 7 boats that race at the Big Ten championships and 51 athletes. And I think when I started, there was, we had fielded only 5 of the 7 boats the previous year, and the roster was less than the number of starting spots at the conference championship. So it was a fun challenge to sort of take on. And that first year is we did not go to the NCAAs my first year, but we improved quite a bit the first 8. Finished 6th out of 8 that year, and proved to be more competitive. And then it was the second year then that we went to the NCAAs for the first time. And the team finished 11th that year. The first 8 finished 10th. So I think that was quite rewarding. And the reason that was so rewarding for me as a coach was because the juniors and seniors on that team, that was the 2019 team, they had been freshmen and sophomores, and they had experienced, getting 8th out of 8 at the Big Ten championships, and not even being close to the NCAAs. So for them as juniors and seniors to be finishing in, there's a number of athletes that were in the first 8 that were 10th at the NCAAs that just 2 years prior had been 8th at the Big Ten championships. So I think that was a whole new level for them. And, it's one of the things that's what I love about coaching, is trying to help the same people get completely different results. And, that's what we did. And that's the power of training. That's the power of practice. That's the power of building a team, is that there's no, like I said earlier, there's no script. There's no, like, a certain team is supposed to do something or not supposed to do something like that. That doesn't exist. And oftentimes you see similar teams across all sports, have similar success. And I think sometimes people get it sort of confused and think, oh, that's because these people are the favorites, or they're supposed to win, or these guys are supposed to lose. And I think that one of the things that we tried to teach early on there is no supposed to. I think that's something that we really need to make sure that we continue to instill in our team moving forward, even into our ninth year. Just because we've, been competitive in the past or gone to the NCAA championships in the past, like, well, that was the previous year's teams, and so we have a great opportunity ahead of us in 2026 to earn the opportunity to show that we can be among the best teams in the country, but we definitely have to earn it. And there's no script. There is no, we're supposed to be there or not supposed to be there. And that's what I love about the challenge every year. And so I think that's what our athletes really enjoy that. I think that's what they love about training here and being part of our team, is that they know that everything that we create is something that we create together, and nobody else does it. It belongs completely to all of the people that are here, that are invested, that are doing what it takes every single day, every year. So when I think back to that first team, even though we didn't go to the NCAA championships, and that was the only year, other than obviously COVID, when there was no NCAA championships, that was the only year that we have not gone to the NCAAs. But that was a really powerful year and powerful building block. And that was probably one of the most improved teams, probably was the most improved team that we've had here from, again, the year before I was here, spring of 2017, to the next year. It was a completely different ball game. And then obviously 1 year later, and now the team's 11th at the NCAA championships. And we've been fortunate enough to have a few more successful years along the way, and continue to try to climb up the ranks and try to be competitive. But the landscape is competitive out there, and that's what's great. It's great for the whole sport. We want to make sure we're part of driving the entire sport and the level up higher and higher every year, and it certainly seems to be going that way across the country.
You had something. I'm going to run back after, but you had a quote in there that I really love. But it's like with coaching, like it's helping the same athletes do, get different results or something like that. I'll rewind it at some point and grab that quote. But I think I really love that messaging. Like, it's like, okay, well, how can we kind of take these current athletes? This is the group of athletes that we have at this current stage. It's like, hey, how can we kind of develop those athletes to achieve results that they've never otherwise achieved? And I love that way that you put it. But the other piece to that is over the course of these last 8 years and the success that you had, like, what are some pillars that you guys have kind of latched onto, or you as a coach really latched onto, that you feel have been primary contributors to this growth? And obviously there's the team and the culture and bringing in coaches that are in alignment with your vision, and recruiting and getting athletes who want to be there, want to be a part of this trajectory. What, if you had to kind of pick a few, like, just core pillars that you've kind of centered a lot of this growth around, or you feel contributed to this growth, like, what would you say are some things that really kind of led to where we are today with, all the great years that you've had over the last few years?
I think it's just, it's basic things, like the amount of effort and commitment that's put in, but what that means for us, and all of our coaches, all of our athletes understand that, the more we invest, the more we're going to get out. And I think that, there's been a lot of investment. And so I think that that's a theme. And then we have a lot of pride. We have a pride in who we are. We want to have pride in our performance across the board. We want to have pride as a team. We want to have pride in individual performances. We want to have pride in our academic success, and everything that we do, not just on a yearly basis within the program, but for our alumni graduating and moving on. We want them to have so much pride in who they are and what they do. And so I think that's really been the theme. And so when I started in the program, I think that, again, we had people that wanted to be really, really good, but I think, to be honest, we're just a little bit intimidated by the challenge, and looked at some of the competition and felt like, I don't know if I can be that good, but to help the same people understand that they can get better day by day, if they just go through the stages, go through the process. And so those have been the themes. That's what we do. And it's really basic things, but it's trying to do them with consistency again and again, and do them really, really well. That's been what it takes. And like I said, invested people that are really committed can get a lot done.
Yeah. I think that's great insight for any athlete out there, any coach out there. I think the next layer to that I wanted to kind of chat a little bit about, like, I think when I was, poking around your roster, right, look, before we kind of logged on today, right, just seeing the athletes that you have and the growth. And I think one of the things I wanted to talk about, right, so you have, I think, four coaches under you, I think, right? You kind of have your, your assistant coaching staff. You have a roster of, like you said, right, able to field 7/8 at the conference tournament, right, or the conference championship. Like, where does recruiting kind of fit into this process? I think for you guys, you even highlighted it before, but if you go on your Instagram, you have a bunch of athletes who are placing at overseas right now in worlds and all these different things. Like, but then you also have a lot of athletes who are probably homegrown, Northeast or even in Philadelphia or up north and whatever. Like, where does that process begin? Like, and just the recruiting journey to, again, like a piece of what you were talking about with the success over these last 8 years is probably getting the athletes in there who you feel are able to push that initiative and kind of be able to push you to new levels. Like, where does that journey kind of begin for you as a coach and trying to find the athletes that you feel are going to be the right fit for a top 10 NCAA program?
Yeah, well, recruiting is really, really important, and it's all about finding the right people, for the team and for our organization. Um, the people are what do it. I mean, we're fortunate enough to have a lot of great resources here at Rutgers and a lot of great support, but it's about the people, about the athletes that are in the program, the coaches that we have on our staff. That's what does it. It's the people that win and the people that have success. And so the recruiting process, getting to know people, identifying people, but really the biggest key is developing relationships. And it's not just in a recruiting process, more importantly, over the course of time to help people understand who we are, what we're looking to do, how we want to do things, and finding people that are really attracted to that. I think that's really the key. We try not to spend too much time selling people or convincing people to be part of what we're doing, because if they take that much convincing, they may not be, ready to add that much and excited to add to it. We want to find the people that are really drawn to and attracted to kind of who we are, the way we talk about things, the way we do things, and want to add to it and make it better because they're here. That's certainly what I want to do as a coach, is help try to make our team better because I'm here, and I want all of our athletes and all of our coaches to do the same thing. Is hopefully we're all better, making each other better, and we're making the team better because of our presence. So in the recruiting process, what we want to do is find the sort of characteristics of the people that are really drawn to be here, the people that love training. I think that's something that's really important that we're looking for, because that's what it takes to be successful. Is training and approaching the basics with consistency on a daily basis, and having, like I said earlier, pride in performance. People that have pride in their performance across the board, people that love working hard, people that love to be measured, people that love to challenge themselves. That's who we want every day. That's who we want to hang around. That's who we want to spend our time with. That's who we want to work together. Again, this is a group project that, like I said, we're on a problem-solving mission to see what makes the boat go faster, and how fast we can go, how much success we can have. And we want to attract, find people, and then build people that are going to do that as a group. So recruiting is critical to that process.
And what what to you, like, are those, whether it's tangible or intangible qualities, right? Whether it's kind of the facts and figures, or just the personality traits that you feel like are, that you feel are crucial to not only just getting into a school and being a part of a Division I roster, but that you feel are, non-negotiables, or I guess non-negotiables is the wrong word, because I'm sure every athlete has a different path to get there, but things that you feel like are, underlying just measurables that you feel like, hey, this is an athlete who probably, looking at them today in high school, this is an athlete who probably could be eventually a contributor to our NCAA roster, right? If not even the varsity 8. Like, what are some of those qualities that you and the other coaches look for in athletes, where you're kind of trying to predict, right? Like their path. Like, oh, this is an athlete who I feel like can come in and probably in a year or two contribute to one of those top end boats. Like, take that wherever you want, but what do you feel like are some of those measurables?
Well, I think that it's really hard to identify. I think if you try to. I think one of the things that I talk to our staff about all the time when we look at recruiting and trying to identify the athletes that are going to have the most success in our program over the course of time. I am fascinated because I look to some of the professional sports like the NFL or NBA, and I think about the amount of money and time and energy and sort of human power that's put into doing research and they can't seem to get it that right, and they miss on a Tom Brady and he becomes the best person ever, play quarterback in the NFL. And then there's people that are drafted in the top 5 or top 10 of a draft that 3 years later are out of the league and never make it to the Hall of Fame. So, we're under no illusions. If they can't do it that well, I don't know that we're going to do it better than an NFL team or something like that. So starts with that. I think that's what makes it fascinating is that you never know. Sometimes you just don't know. Sometimes there might be an athlete that you think is going to be really, really successful that doesn't necessarily achieve at the level that you thought they might. And then there's also been many, many times that there's athletes that may be overlooked by other programs or somebody else. It might not seem like on paper like they're going to be the best prospect, but they end up becoming one of the best athletes on our team or an All-American or world champion or something like that. And I think that's really, really fun. So trying to identify what those things is, I mean, that's like the $64,000 question, I think, across the board, but I think it really comes down to, who people are at their core. How do they respond when they're challenged? I think that a lot, like people like to be good at things, and that's something we talk about within our program. But, I'm not sure that there's an absolute that good or bad. I don't know that somebody is fast or slow. I don't know that somebody is good or bad. I think somebody could be faster than somebody else. I think somebody could be slower. I think they could be stronger. I think they could be weaker. But again, I'm, saw something on Instagram that was like comparing, Olympic swimmers from the early 1900s to the 2024, swimming in Paris, and it was obviously laughable. The difference in speed of somebody that was once an Olympic champion wouldn't even come close to qualifying if they were to hop in the pool in 2024. And so again, to fast forward 100 years from now, like the person that was Olympic champion in 2024 may not make the Olympic trial standard 100 years from now. So, I'm a big believer in that there's no absolute like we don't have a lot of standards where it's like, okay, faster than this is good and below this is not good or things like that. So, again, it's to your question, well, what are the things then? And I think they are hard to put your finger on. I think they are a lot of times intangible. And so, two people that have the same ability, they have the same physiology, they have the, same height, same wingspan, same 2K time on the earth, for example, that are two different human beings, and one of them gets challenged and loses at something or gets ranked last compared to 10 of their peers, and the other person that's going the exact same speed, gets ranked last. One of them might get demotivated and feel like, oh, I'm not that good. And they might sort of turn away and not want to do it as much. The other person might be more motivated by that and might work harder and be undeterred. I think that it's people that are undeterred that seemingly to me have more success. And so if there was a way for us as coaches to figure out who are the people that are just undeterred when they get knocked down, when they fall down, they don't get embarrassed, they just dust themselves off and they spend no time with the poor me's. They just get right back to it and go again and again and again and understand that, to be human is to err. To be human is to fail. We're not expecting to be perfect. We're not looking for people who are perfect. All of us are just normal human beings that are fallible, that have plenty of flaws. So we don't spend time in recruiting try to find people that don't have those things. It's really when those things demonstrate themselves, which they surely do every day. How do you respond? Do you become deterred? And I think especially for young people, for obvious reasons, like, nobody wants to, look worse compared to their peers. Nobody wants to fail at something. But again, sometimes what failure is just relative to the time and place of the people that you're around. And I think, again, that's a fascinating psychological experience, because if the same result in one time and place would have somebody feel like they're really good at something, and the same result in a different time and place would have the same person feel like they failed just because of what's happening around them. To me, that's fascinating as a coach. So I think about what are things within our environment that we can do to get people to be totally locked in and focused on themselves and not be distracted by how far ahead of their opponent they may be. How do we make that become largely irrelevant, and vice versa? If you're, 30 seconds behind somebody else, like, don't be bogged down by that. Maybe it motivates you, great, but really focus on yourself. Are you improving? And that's something as a coach that we're looking for. A lot of times in recruiting, we'll hear people that are excited because they'll say, well, I'm the best person on my team, so I can't wait to get to Rutgers, or I can't wait to get to college and have other people to push me. And I say, well, we have the fastest person on our team. And if she said that, I'd be kind of disappointed, and the Olympic team and the Olympic champions, they have the best person on their team too. And if that person said that, that would be kind of disappointing to me, And so I think, like, what if we had someone who was a world record holder? If she said, well, I just need someone else to push me, I would feel like, as a coach, I can't fail that athlete. Like she doesn't need somebody else to make her better. What are the things and the tools that we can create, and vice versa? Someone could be the worst on the team. If they feel like they're demoralized because they're the worst one on our team, to me, they're distracted by other people. Why is that relevant to them? Are they improving? So those are things that in the recruiting process we look for, but more importantly, it's what we build within our team. We want to make sure the best people on our team are improving the most and getting better. That's something I absolutely challenge our leaders on our team. Can the best people on our team become the most improved? But I also challenge, obviously, the least experienced younger members of our team. No chance. Don't let the older athletes be more improved than you. And then we try to have fun with that competition relative to yourself. Who's making the biggest improvements relative to themselves? Because the moment somebody feels like, well, I'm better than everybody else at this time and place, I'm going to take my foot off the gas because I beat everybody else today at Rutgers. Why is that relevant? And again, vice versa, the person that's last, if she gets demoralized because everybody at Rutgers beat her today, that might distract her from what she needs to do to get better and grow.
Yeah, I love that. And the internal motivation, right? Kind of finding those internally motivated athletes who, again, are, it just willing to kind of go about or just challenge themselves internally and being able to kind of go about the process. But with that, what role, like you said, like, okay, well, what role does the erg play in that process, right? I think we're in a northern climate, right? I'm in Philadelphia. You're a little bit, you're in New Jersey. Like the erg is obviously something that's going to be integrated, right? Versus, okay, well, UCLA, probably the erg plays a different role in the journey than, say, up here in the Northeast, right? We're not Boston, New Hampshire, kind of winter, right? But we a large portion of our training kind of goes into the erg, and both from recruiting, but also just challenging that internal motivation of an athlete objectively on paper, right? That's the beauty of the erg, right? It flashes that number in front of you, and it's going to tell you how you doing today, right? Whether we like it or not. Where does that fit into this this process? Not just recruiting, but just in the grand scheme of producing. Again, I keep coming back to it, but NCAA Division I top 10 program type athletes. Like, where does that fit in? Take that wherever you want, but where does that fit in?
It's incredibly. I think that for all athletes to improve, like we just talked about, you need objective analysis. You need objective measurement, and the erg is, probably the best, simplest way to have clear, consistent, objective, individual feedback in our sport that will translate to success in a large part. And so, if we're relying on, if we think we're getting better, or we hope that we're getting better, or we just feel like, we had a really good row, and we don't actually have objective feedback or data to back that up, we might mislead ourselves, unintentionally. And so what the erg allows us to do is measure ourselves, but it also is just really valuable to have consistent training. Like, I think the erg, a lot of times people, it's interesting sometimes, even talking to recruits, and they ask, like, how often we're on the erg and different things like that, as if they're afraid of the thing. And you can row easy on the erg, you can row medium intensity on the erg, you row hard on the erg, and I think sometimes people get too accustomed to going as hard as they can on the erg, and that's the only way they use it. So we definitely use the erg in training, similar to, in a lot of ways, how we would do obviously on the water training. There's certainly differences, no doubt, when you're not putting the blade in and out of the water, and you're not rowing in an 8-person boat or a 4-person boat or things like that. But there's a lot of similarities in terms of the training and the physiology, whether you're rowing indoors or outdoors. And the beauty of rowing on the erg is that you can measure what you're doing. You can measure your progress. You can build a lot of consistency from day to day. and you can sort of measure your output too. So calibrating your efforts is really, really critical so that you learn to sustain an effort, which might mean that you need to go easier so you can sustain it for longer. And, somebody might want to go faster, but they don't have the fitness to do it. And I think it's important to have that realization, have that understanding. For me, it doesn't need to be a big deal. If you're not as fit as you'd like to be, it's just the truth, so hiding from it or running away from it is not going to change it. In fact, it might make it worse, because somebody might enable themselves or allow themselves to have wishful thinking and, not hop on the erg as much as they should, and then hope that maybe their fitness is better than it really is, rather than just hopping on the erg, get their heart rate monitor, and realize, wow, my heart rate is really accelerated for this split. I wish my split was a lot lower at this heart rate, but the reality is it's not. So the sooner we can find that out and just, train in the right way over time, like that's how you're going to really improve. And so I think, we want to make sure our athletes understand that. We definitely utilize that within our program quite a bit, and the athletes like that because they can see when they're improving. They have that objective feedback. It's not me telling them, I think you're getting better. They know if they have a personal best, or if they're improving, or, they're doing the same split at a lower heart rate, that they know, oh, I'm fitter. I can hold the same split for longer at a given heart rate. Oh, I'm fitter than I was. And they know that only happens through consistent training and fitness.
I think that's and that's super important to hear, like for athletes and parents out there, where I think you kind of alluded to it, right? There's a lot of high school athletes who maybe they come from a program where they only erg, like on test day, and that's it, right? And now their only exposure to the machine is hard, right? It's challenging and sometimes demoralizing, because their only exposure leads to a result that might not have been a true assessment of where they are today. And then that's kind of feedback leads to a negative narrative. So I think coming from you, like for people to hear, like, okay, like this is a valuable piece to what we do, and it complements what we do on the water, I think is a huge piece. So I think that's a really valuable piece for a lot of younger athletes to hear. Is there like a favorite erg workout that you do, or that you really love in the fall, that like, like a really again, it doesn't have to be like a, hey, we do, testing this test all the time, but like, is there like a favorite erg workout that you guys come back to that you feel like, whether you repeat it or you see it once or twice, you feel like it's a good teachable workout to kind of expose your athletes to, for X reason? Is there a workout that you kind of comes front in mind?
I think that there's not one that necessarily would be a favorite or more important or valuable than the others, because it takes a lot of things. You got to train different systems. You have to do different kinds of workouts to have success, to race, to become a complete 2,000 meter racer, and to become a better endurance athlete over time. It takes, working all different systems. It takes different workouts. And ultimately it takes consistency. So I think that, for me as a coach, and our athletes know this, it's all of the workouts. It's everything, and if we put more stock in, even as a coach, if I start to put more stock in one workout than another as a metric or a tool, and we do have sort of to give a teaching, like we want to help our athletes understand if they want to be Big Ten champions, we want to be able to give them sort of a way to assess their fitness, like, am I strong enough to be competitive? So we want to be able to teach that, but we don't want to overvalue certain workouts and undervalue others. So to prepare for 2,000 meter racing takes, working all of the systems. It takes being able to have endurance and to do something at, 75 to 80% of your maximum heart rate for a long period of time, for an hour plus, with consistency, and then come back the next day and do it again and again and again, and then with fatigue in your legs, be able to produce a lot of power for 2,000 meters or sustained duration. So doing workouts that are 2,000 meters and longer, that are hard, sort of anaerobic threshold type workouts, are really, really valuable and really important too. But again, doing those without, building the aerobic base and the endurance, becomes not as valuable. So, yeah, there's not one workout or specific type of workout, but we do repeat workouts so their athletes can see success. I think that, and measure their success. I think that's one of the things that I try to do as a coach, is give athletes repeated workouts so they can see, week after week or month by month as we go through the season, see if they're improving. or if not, obviously if an athlete is stagnant, I want them to see that too. Or if an athlete is regressing, I think it's really, really important that they see that too, because the name of the game is progress. And so if you don't repeat workouts, I think sometimes that makes it harder because, how do you compare? If it's, oh, this is a completely different workout. It's like, oh, I did this workout 4 weeks ago. I can see how I did. I can hold 2 splits faster than I did 4 weeks ago. Awesome. Like that is great progress. And it takes all the workouts to make that kind of progress happen.
Yeah. You had one of the things that comes to mind as you were talking there, like you had one quote that I think is transferable to that piece too, with just repeating the same workouts. But I think it was, again, another one that I'll rewind the clock and gather. But it was like, don't get bored of the basics. And I think, something like that, right? And I think that's applicable to repeating workouts. I feel like sometimes as coaches, you feel like you have to dress it up and throw all this, especially when you see like, maybe it's high school or it's the dead of winter for any program, you have to kind of add a little bit of variety. But I think repeating workouts allows for motivation through visible progress. You can kind of like see yourself getting better on a month-to-month basis or week-to-week basis. I think, not getting bored in the basics, but also, not being afraid to kind of repeat, workouts that you maybe seen a few times and kind of striving for another objective, another performance in that. So I love it. I think last few questions here. I want to be conscious of your time, but I think before we get to just general advice for athletes, general, kind of advice for younger athletes who are going about the quest to maybe one day row for a competitive program like Rutgers or any program out there. But before we get to that, like, talk to me a little bit about you're entering year 9, almost a decade here in at Rutgers in New Jersey. Like, you're the largest stint of your coaching career is here, right? What about this community, this campus, the area, whatever it may be, like what latches you onto Rutgers University, the campus, the rowing program? Like, what are a few things that kind of keep you attached to this and now you have your roots in as you come across almost a decade at one location, at one program? Take that wherever you want, but just what keeps you coming back and your attachment to this particular program?
Well, it's the same thing that brought me here in the first place, which, again, like I said earlier, to be part of something so much bigger than myself. So to be in the Big Ten, to be at a world-class university like Rutgers University, it's just incredible. So, and to have the history that we have and to be able to add on to that, with 50 years of coaches and athletes and women that have worked really, really hard, to establish, success in this program and to add to it, that's a tremendous opportunity that I don't take lightly. And I want to make sure I, have a responsibility to make it better. So, it's the opportunity to do that, to be part of it, to add to it, to write our story every day, and we want to honor the 50-year history of our program, but also make sure that it's even better 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 20 years from now, 25 years from now. And that's what I came here to do, is hopefully, contribute in a positive way to the program, but also, do the work that it takes to make it better and better and better, not just while I'm here, but well beyond, long into the future, so that people can continue to build on what we're doing here. So I'm having a blast. It feels like I just got here, even though I'm getting into my 9th year. I feel like we're just getting started. So I have to catch myself sometimes. I feel like to me, it's the same conversation or similar conversation when I'm talking to a recruit that I had when I first got here. But I realized, I guess I've been here for a while. And now with the recruits, as they're coming through high school, I've probably been at Rutgers longer than they've been rowing. But it feels to me like I just got here. I still remember, the athletes that our first year. I remember our first days here on campus, and it doesn't feel different to me. So, like I said earlier, every year is a different year. It's very much not, same thing again and again and again. It's all new every year, and that's what makes it exciting, and that's what keeps me coming back for more and trying to work harder and harder every year to get better.
I love it. Last question for you. Just piece of advice for any athlete going out there, and again, they, whatever stage of their journey they're in, they want to row in college. They want to understand what, college rowing, especially at that level, is all about. And again, D1, NCAA qualifying, or top 10 finisher. Like they want to pursue that route and better position themselves for college run success. What advice could you provide to any of those athletes and put yourself in those shoes to kind of better set them up for long-term success?
Yeah, well, I think one of the things that we focus on here, that I try to focus our athletes on, is, we don't want there to be a point of attainment, meaning like, hey, if only we can win a Big Ten championship or the NCAA championship, or if only we do this finish or that, or win this race or whatever. We don't want there ever to be this point of attainment, because, okay, what's next? As we go through our lives, I think, people, for obvious reasons, we look to certain mileposts or goalposts, and we aspire to achieve certain things, but those achievements, can really be fleeting, if you don't think about what's next, or if you don't use achievements to parlay into what you're going to do next in your life. And I think sometimes people, they struggle to understand it. So I think if you're in high school and you just want to be recruited, or you want to become a Division I athlete, is that exciting because of the opportunities and the challenges it will afford and provide to you, or does it feel like a huge accomplishment? And I think, sometimes the athletes they're just focused on accomplishing something and getting to a certain milepost, and they don't think beyond that, with a bigger perspective and bigger vision. Sometimes struggle. They may have a period where they have to now figure out, well, I accomplished what I wanted to accomplish. Now what? And we try to really wire our athletes and build a culture and a mindset of, while we have certain aspirations, no question, in our lives, like, we want to have high aspirations, have ambition. That's really, really important to who we are and what we do. But there's no point of attainment. We've never made it. No matter what happens, no matter what we achieve, we want to be really proud of everything that we achieve, everything that goes into that, and then, okay, what's next, right? So, most recently, like, our first state winning Henley, like, that is a great achievement. Like, I want them to be really, really proud of the work that they did to earn that, to create that. I want them to enjoy the success that comes along with that. And I want them to use everything they did there to go figure out what's next. How do I continue to grow? And so that would be my advice to athletes, is focus on growth, focus on learning, focus on always getting better. And I think that's one of the things that I've enjoyed through my life, is that, I'm better than ever. I've never been better than I am right now. And I bet 5 years from now, I'll be even better. 10 years from now, I'll be even better. And I think that's true for everybody, if they have the right mentality. So that's what's fun to me about coming to work every day. That's what's fun about training. That's what's fun about every year with our team, is that it's just opportunity to grow and get better.
I love it. As a point of attainment, right? Never have a point of attainment or whatever, right? Like, I think that's a crucial or really, really good advice that anyone can run back and listen to again. Justin, this was a blast. I really enjoyed having a conversation with you, learning a little bit more about the team and the mission and what you guys are trying to accomplish. You're only a short drive away, so I will be reaching out at some point to invite myself, hopefully, to maybe come check out the boathouse and launch, maybe at some point down the line. Because again, I really enjoy following the team and kind of learning a little bit more about it, and obviously the successes that you guys are having. So with that, good luck as you prep for the fall. Good luck, as you build to take it even further, next spring. I know it's a long journey ahead. So, good luck as you guys kind of, wrap up your short summer and prep for that next campaign. So thank you so much for coming on, and hopefully we'll talk again soon.
Thanks so much for having me on, and look forward to having you up here.